Hello and welcome to Nightlight's orientation to Ukraine's adoption program. Once you view this video, a follow-up telephone call will be scheduled with one of our Ukraine team members to allow us to get to know you better and to answer any questions you may have concerning the material presented in this webinar. When you received the Ukraine orientation email, you probably noticed it had many links to additional information. I urge you to save that email. Bookmark it, print it, and do whatever you need to do to keep it because you will be required to access the checklists as you complete your parent education and prepare your dossier, and you may need to refer to some of the information. In order to access the checklists in our portal, you will need to sign in using the same email and password you created when you filled out your application. There is a link posted here in the email for password help should you require it. We will be discussing several items to help you get started on your adoption journey, and hopefully by the end of this talk, you will have a better grasp on all that is required and an idea where you need to start. I promise you that you will feel quite overwhelmed, but there are ways to break the process into parts so that it seems more manageable. Today, we will go over Hague orientation topics, talk about choosing a home study provider, touch on parent education, discuss filing the I-600A with the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, explain the service plan and dossier instructions for Ukraine. I will begin by introducing myself and telling you a little bit about our agency. My name is Carson Laskar. I'm the Bulgaria and Ukraine Program Assistant here at Nightlight. I've been working in adoptions for a little under a year and a half now. Nightlight has been in operation since the 1950s. In addition to many international programs, they also offer domestic adoptions, home study services, foster programs, and pioneered the Snowflakes embryo adoption program. The Indiana office, previously known as MLJ Adoptions, officially aligned with Nightlight on March 1st. The best way I found to go through the documents is to have you open the Ukraine orientation email, open the orientation document checklist, and I will go through each document explaining its purpose and talking about specifics. Please be sure to write down any questions you may have so our Ukraine staff can answer them during the follow-up phone call. The first document I want you to open is the Hague orientation topics for Ukraine. It is important that you read this document thoroughly, but I'm going to hit some of the highlights. Anyone who is adopting internationally must have an approved home study, apply to receive pre-approval to adopt from the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, also known as USCIS, and prepare a set of documents called a dossier, which will be submitted to Ukraine for approval. Different countries require different documents, so that is why the dossier instructions are specific to Ukraine. Most children who are awaiting adoption in Ukraine are either with foster families, orphanages, or institutionalized. Anytime a child is in less than optimal care, they are at risk for malnutrition, delays in any or all areas of development, unhealthy living conditions, sickness, and abuse that may include emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. These children all have trauma in their backgrounds from abandonment, inconsistent caregiving, and substandard care. This is why parent education is an important part of the adoption process to help you prepare for your child's needs when they come home. Intercountry conditions that affect children in Ukraine are children coming from poor families with low educational levels, children come into care after being abandoned, relinquished, or because of the death of parents. Reasons for abandonment can be poverty, unemployment, or single parenthood. Eligibility requirements can also be found on the U.S. Department of State website. The eligibility requirements change from time to time, and Nightlight remains updated at all times. That is one reason our application form asks so many questions. We want to ensure that you are eligible to adopt from the program you desire. The trend and climate of intercountry adoptions has declined by almost 70% since 2004. The reason for this decline is a result of the shift in political acceptance of intercountry adoption. Most nations navigate two opposing forces, trying to accommodate adoptive parents and the needs of orphans, while also satisfying powerful anti-adoption influences. And increasing difficulty in adopting internationally is actually intentional and meant to reduce the number of adoptions. The motive behind the anti-adoption movement is complicated but includes national pride, political retaliation, and a well-meaning but naive desire to prefer indigenous orphan care solutions. It is important to note that our agency has no control over the rate at which referrals are made by Ukraine adoption officials. While many children with special needs are available, agencies have no control over the children that are made available for adoption. Your openness to gender, age range, and various medical conditions will affect the length of time you may wait for a match. The more open a family's criteria for their child, the more quickly they will be matched compared to families who request a very young female with minor special needs. Now let's talk about post-adoption reporting. Ukraine has self-reporting for post-adoption reporting. Your home study agency will be able to explain this to you. Post-adoption obligations should be taken very seriously. Our agency is held personally responsible for the supervision of your placement. It is very important that you comply with reporting, as adoption programs are placed in jeopardy when families do not fulfill their obligation. Failure to complete post-adoption reporting puts our program at risk and may prohibit future families from adopting orphan children. Please take note that we have very strongly worded language regarding post-adoption obligations in the agreements that you have signed for our agency, which allows us to take you to court for non-compliance. While we haven't had to file a court case, we have had to send letters reminding families of their promise. It is important to note that the U.S. Department of State enforces post-adoption compliance. Failure to comply will also affect any plans you have to adopt in the future. One last thing regarding Hague topics. No fee should ever be paid to a foreign supervised provider, an adoption central authority, and/or any other person involved in your adoption case in a foreign country without written permission from your Nightlight coordinator. Historically, this has not been a problem with Ukraine, but if you are asked to pay any fees in country that are not outlined on your adoption fee schedule, please notify our office immediately. Bribes are strictly prohibited and will be reported to the U.S. Department of State. I've gone over most everything in this document. If you have thoroughly read it and understand, you can sign it electronically, date, and submit. Of course, if you have questions about the content, be sure to ask those during the telephone follow-up call. Next, we will talk about choosing a home study provider. Nightlight is your placing agency for Ukraine. If you live in a state where we have an office, we will also be your home study agency. If you live outside of our service area, you must choose a home study provider. It is imperative under Ukraine rules that your home study agency is Hague accredited. If you live in a state served by Nightlight, you will soon be contacted by that office to begin the home study process. If you do not, there is more information to help you locate the Hague accredited provider in the orientation email. You can click on the link where a list of Hague accredited home study agencies are listed by state, or you may contact Debbie Jasper, the social services manager in our Indiana office, and have her give you a list of home study agencies we have worked with in the past in your state. Her contact information is listed in the orientation email. Finally, once your application has been accepted by the home study provider agency, please complete and upload the home study provider information sheet and international orientation checklist. It is very important that you return this before you begin the home study process. The first reason is because Nightlight must have an exempt provider agreement in place with the agency prior to beginning the home study. And secondly, we will ensure the home study is Hague accredited. This is a very important note. If you begin the home study process prior to providing Nightlight with your home study provider information, you may have to choose another provider, which could result in losing any money you paid to the previous provider. Once your home study is completed, which can take anywhere from 2 to 4 months or longer, depending on how quickly you and your social worker are able to obtain documentation, you'll be ready to file Form I-600A. The link to that form can be found here. However, if you have watched the dossier instruction guide, you will know that the Ukraine team will mail you the current link to the form with instructions to help you fill out once you are ready for this step. With that being said, you don't really need to do anything with this document. It is just a link to a form you will use later in the process. When you received the orientation email and opened the portal, you had access to the orientation document checklist, as well as a separate checklist for international parent education documents. A link was provided to a webinar explaining Nightlight's parent education requirements. If you have not yet watched this, you must so that your parent education will not be delayed. As a recap, all adoptive families are required to complete 10 hours of Hague education prior to completing their home study. The additional requirement consists of reading about and understanding post-adoption stress and depression, completing a post-adoption support plan, learning about the history and culture of your child's country, speaking with a parent who has previously adopted a child through Nightlight, and reading a book entitled The Connected Child. You will end up with more than 12 hours of education to help prepare you for your parenting an adopted child. You will also complete 10 hours of education each year with your home study update. The next document I want to bring your attention to is the Child Preference Form. This is a document that is used to identify your preferences for a child as to gender, age range, and medical needs. It is important to understand that this document may be updated throughout the process to adjust your preferences as you continue being educated about adoption. Talking to others who have adopted children with specific needs and meeting with medical professionals to determine what you feel you can handle. This form is used by your social work in writing your approval statement in the home study and by the Ukraine team as we watch the shared list for children. The service plan is a document that identifies the 6 adoption services that are rendered in inter-country adoptions and who is responsible for each service. Nightlight Christian Adoptions is your primary provider and placing agency for a child from Ukraine. As a primary provider, we will coordinate your adoption, help identify a child for adoption, and arrange for the adoption. We will also work with the agency providing your home study and coordinate with the staff to provide translation and travel arrangements in Ukraine. As your primary service provider, Nightlight is available to assist you whether you are in the United States or traveling abroad. We will be working with the central authority in Ukraine known as the Ministry of Social Policy. They are responsible for identifying children who are available for adoption and arranging the adoption, securing the necessary paperwork showing termination of parental rights and agreement to adoption. On this form, please fill in the name of your home study agency and their phone number as well as the social worker from that agency and their contact information. Nightlight and your home study provider make non-judicial determinations of the best interests of a child and the appropriateness of an adoptive placement for the child. The Ministry of Social Policy, in conjunction with Nightlight, will monitor a case after a child has been placed with your family until final adoption. Also in this document is a list of contacts at Nightlight who will work in the Ukraine program as well as our email addresses. Your adoption will be finalized while you are in country, and when you return home, you are expected to continue to work with your home study provider to complete post-adoption reports. Your home study provider will visit you at specified times following the adoption to provide consultation on adjustment, help you identify or problem solve any issues that have arisen, and write a report to send along with the photos of your child to Nightlight, who will forward them electronically. Again, post-adoption reports for Ukraine are self-reporting after you arrive home. Nightlight also requires families to comply with a 1-month check-in. Again, timely compliance is necessary. It is important to know, and you will be reminded of this throughout the process, that if you are struggling with your adoption plan or having adjustment issues with a child when you get home, please contact us and let us help you identify resources and rally your family, friends, church, and other professionals to provide support and guidance to you. We have a post-adoption connection center ready and willing to provide resources to families. We want you to be successful, and we know that sometimes there is a lot of stress and struggle through the transition phase and beyond. We want to be a beacon of light to you and work with you to ensure a successful placement, a well-adjusted child, an attached, happy, and loving family. Once you can fill in your home study provider information to this document, please sign and date and upload to the portal. The last thing is the dossier instruction booklet. I trust that you were able to read the booklet and watch the video, which touched on some specific times. I encourage you to contact Victoria and myself, discuss any questions you have about the dossier instructions, as well as we will be working with you through the dossier phase. To wrap up the orientation, I want to remind you of the checklist on our online portal with some orientation documents you need to either sign and upload or sign electronically. Be sure to watch the video explaining our parent education requirements and look at all of the parent education documents under the International Parent Education Checklist in our portal. You will also need to watch the video explaining the dossier instructions. Please do not just watch the video. It is also important that you read the entire booklet, which contains more specific information about the dossier. You're probably wondering, where in the world do I start? What do I do next? My suggestion is to talk to agencies who can complete your home study. Once you contact with them, you can finish the service plan and home study information sheet in the orientation checklist. Make sure they are approved as your home study provider, and then you can begin your parent education. Do not forget to submit documents as they are completed. In addition, we always want you to feel free to not forget to submit documents as they are completed. In addition, we always want you to feel free to contact us with any questions, comments, or concerns you may have. This concludes the webinar. Please email Carson, Karson, @nightlight.org after you have watched all the videos and are ready to have the follow-up orientation phone call. Thank you and enjoy your day.